It is Election Day 2022, so who's going to win the big races today? Well, I tell you what, I am no prognosticator. I've never made a living as a fortune teller, but I'm going to tell you who I think is going to win the most high-profile races around the country. I am recording this at about 4 p.m. Central on Election Day, Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. The polls won't be starting to close for another couple hours at least, so let's go ahead, get ahead of the rush hour traffic here, and get straight into some predictions. So let's start with the main thing that everybody's talking about, the race to control the United States Senate. Currently, the Senate is tied with 50 Republicans, 48 Democrats, and 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats. The most talked about race for the U.S. Senate going on this year is, of course, Pennsylvania. Senator Pat Toomey, he is the Republican senator from Pennsylvania. He is retiring. He is leaving an open seat. The candidates fighting for that seat are the Democratic nominee, Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, and Republican nominee Dr. Mehmet Oz. Now, the Democrats have considered this seat to be their best chance for a pickup ever since Toomey announced that he was going to retire. Then, just after the Democratic primary, John Fetterman suffered a stroke. That stroke adversely affected his ability to communicate. Now, I have said repeatedly right here on this channel, I've said it on social media as well, both of these candidates are terrible. Dr. Oz, not a great candidate on the Republican side. And John Fetterman is an absolute train wreck. Actually, you know what? He was a train wreck before the stroke. Now he's a dumpster fire inside a train wreck. Fetterman absolutely embarrassed himself in that debacle of a debate with Dr. Oz on October 25th, and his numbers have cratered ever since. The official political pop culture prediction for this race, Dr. Oz is winning Pennsylvania tonight. Mark it down. Pennsylvania is going to be a Republican hold. That will keep the Senate tied at 50-50. From Pennsylvania, let's go ahead and jump all the way over to Nevada, where Republican challenger Adam Laxalt is going up against incumbent Democrat Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. This is another race that the Democrats thought they pretty much had in the bag. If there was a vulnerable seat for Democrats, they did think this was it, but they were still pretty confident coming into this race. Now, to her credit, Cortez Masto has led the race really since June, but the beginning of October started to mark a shift in the polls. This is the same shift that we have seen from one side of this country to the other. People are really concerned about the economy, and the bump that the Democrats got from the Supreme Court's Roe versus Wade decision, that started to fade. The Republicans, though, they've been surging for the last 5 or 6 weeks. Laxalt, no exception to that. He has led Cortez Masto in all but one of the last 6 polls released. The official political pop culture prediction, Adam Laxalt will defeat Catherine Cortez Masto and become the next senator for the state of Nevada. That puts the Senate at +1 Republican. Okay, next up, we're going to jump back across the country. We're going all the way over to Georgia. Now, with the exception of the race between Fetterman and Oz in Pennsylvania, this race has probably been the most contentious Senate race in the country. Incumbent Democrat Raphael Warnock, a supposed preacher who preaches racism and is in favor of the slaughter of the innocent, has been sicking the attack dogs on Republican challenger Herschel Walker ever since Walker won the nomination. Now, to be fair, I don't really think that Walker is that great a candidate. But on the other hand, I personally believe that Warnock is a racist piece of trash. Some people consider this race to be a choice between the lesser of two evils. But if that's the case, I don't think it's much of a race. And apparently the people of the state of Georgia, they don't think it's much of a race either. Now, they've been going back and forth for months, but Walker has been consistently gaining ground, whereas Warnock is consistently losing ground. The governor's race in Georgia is going to play a factor in this Senate race. Brian Kemp is extremely popular, and he's leading challenger Stacey Abrams by 8+ points. Kemp's popularity is going to help carry Walker across the finish line. Walker is not only going to win the Senate seat in Georgia, but he's going to do it with 50+% of the vote, so there's not going to be a runoff in December. The official political pop culture prediction, Herschel Walker is going to defeat Raphael Warnock and become the next senator for the state of Georgia. That win puts the Senate at +2 Republican. So right now, we're sitting at 52-48 in the Senate, but we're not done yet. Traveling back across the country one more time, let's take a look at Arizona. Incumbent Democrat Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona has been trying to present himself as a moderate. Nobody is fooled. Mark Kelly is not a moderate. This is a guy who has voted with Joe Biden 95% of the time. And the guy's never mentioned the border until Blake Masters called him out on it repeatedly. Look, people in Arizona, they're worried about things like inflation. They're worried about things like crime. They're worried about illegal immigration, and they're worried about the nonstop flow of illegal drugs, including fentanyl, coming into their state. Senator Kelly has done nothing to help the people of Arizona. Now, Blake Masters has been inching ahead in the polls over the last 6 to 8 weeks. He's gained a lot of ground on Mark Kelly. In fact, he's leading Kelly in multiple polls over the last week. Then on top of that, the Libertarian candidate, Mark Victor, he actually dropped out of the race and endorsed Blake Masters. Now, Victor didn't have a lot of support. He had somewhere between 1% and 3% of the vote on average. But if even half of his voters move over to Blake Masters, this race is over. Between the endorsement of the Libertarian candidate and the nationwide trend of independent voters moving to the right, in some cases by more than 20 points, and then on top of that, you have Kari Lake's surging popularity. And by the way, she's going to win that race against Katie Hobbs by at least 7 or 8 points. Go ahead and mark that down too. Anyway, with all of that moving in Blake Masters' favor, Masters is going to pull off the upset here. He is going to defeat Mark Kelly, and Arizona is going to be another pickup for the Republicans. The official political pop culture prediction: Blake Masters will defeat Senator Mark Kelly and become the next senator for the state of Arizona. For those keeping track, that puts the Senate at +3 Republican, bringing the total to 53 Republicans to 47 Democrats in the Senate. Now, there is one more Senate race that I want to mention quickly. That's in New Hampshire. Republican challenger Don Bolduc has gained a lot of ground, including leading in a couple of polls against incumbent Democrat Maggie Hassan. Now, look, this race is a long shot for Republicans. And just 2 weeks ago, I would have said there is no chance that Republicans are going to flip this seat. However, again, with independent voters going so heavily to Republican candidates and with Bolduc leading in multiple polls over the last few weeks, I believe that anti-Democrat sentiment can carry him across the finish line. Now, this race is a legitimate toss-up. It is too close to call. That said, just like some of the other Senate races, I believe the governor's race in New Hampshire could be the deciding factor. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu is by far the most popular politician in the state. Sununu is crushing his Democratic challenger by more than 17 points, and his popularity, along with Maggie Hassan's unpopularity, could very well mean the win for Don Bolduc. So here it is, the official political pop culture prediction. I am going to go out on a limb. I'm going to predict that Don Bolduc will upset Maggie Hassan. Now, my confidence on this pick is the least of all of the picks so far, but my gut is telling me that the anti-Democrat, anti-incumbent sentiment is going to play a factor in this race. If Don Bolduc does carry this race, that puts the Senate at +4 Republican, bringing the total to 54 Republicans to only 46 Democrats in the Senate. And that, my friends, is a red wave. At least that's my prediction. It's going to be interesting to come back and look at this over the next few days and see just how accurate or inaccurate my predictions really were. And hey, if you like the video, do me a favor and hit the like button. And then if you're up for it, hit subscribe as well. Every little bit really does help the channel, so thank you. That's my take. What's your take? You can let me know your take in the comments below. You can also let me know your take by joining the cult at PolPopCult on all major social media outlets. Thank you for listening.